For any assignment-related queries, call us at +1 678 648 4277. You can mail us at support@statisticshomeworksolver.com or reach us at https://www.statisticshomeworksolver.com. Problem 1. Consider the following model of temporal fluctuations in air temperature, where y, T, is temperature in degrees C. T is the number of hours from midnight December 31st, a 1 and a 2 are unknown regression coefficients, and E is assumed to be a zero mean normally random residual error with an unknown standard deviation sigma E. The first cosine function accounts for daily, diurnal, fluctuations while the second cosine function accounts for seasonal fluctuations. Suppose that you have a file called temp.txt that consists of a column of daily temperature measurements taken over a 2-year period. Write a MATLAB program, using the internal MATLAB regress function, to perform a regression analysis for this problem. Make sure that your program does the following. A. Computes least squares estimates of a 1 and a 2 from the data in temp.txt. B. Plots a regression curve on the same axis as the temperature measurements. C. Plots on the same axis as the regression curve and temperature measurements a pair of 95% confidence interval curves for the predicted temperature over the 2-year measurement period. The MATLAB documentation for the regress function is attached at the end of this exam. statisticshomeworksolver.com. Problem 2. Consider the regression ANOVA table presented below. Indicate whether the regression is significant at the 95% confidence level. Compute the R2 value. Problem 3. Consider the following data. statisticshomeworksolver.com. A. Arrange this data in a matrix appropriate as an input to the MATLAB ANOVA program ANOVA 2. Clearly label on the table the factors, climatic zone, agricultural activity, and treatments for the ANOVA problem. B. From an inspection of the data only indicate which factors, if either, have a significant effect on nitrate concentration. Do not perform a detailed ANOVA analysis, just arrive at a conclusion by looking at the data and considering what constitutes a significant effect. The MATLAB documentation for the ANOVA 2 function is attached at the end of this exam. Problem 4. Suppose that you conduct a survey of potholes in roads in Massachusetts versus New Hampshire. You pick several 1-mile strips in each state and count the number of potholes in each strip that could do serious damage to your car. The results are: Massachusetts, 66487, New Hampshire, 42526. Suppose that these results are samples of 2 independent normally distributed random variables, number of potholes/mile in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Use a 2-sided small sample t-test to test the hypothesis H0 that the means of these random variables are the same, i.e. that the difference between the 2 means is 0. Identify and evaluate the statisticshomeworksolver.com. T-distributed standardized test statistic needed to obtain a p-value for the test. Be sure to use the correct standard deviation when you construct the test statistic from the data. Derive the p-value from the t-statistic plot, based on nu equals 5 to 2 equals 3 degrees of freedom, given at the end of this exam. Problem 5. Reconsider the pothole problem described above. Suppose that you want to test the hypothesis H0 that the mean number of potholes on Massachusetts roads is equal to the federal standard of 2 potholes per mile. Also, suppose that your Massachusetts data are samples of an exponentially distributed random variable, the number of potholes/mile in Massachusetts. Construct a MATLAB program to derive the CDF for your test statistic. For this problem, only provide the MATLAB code needed to derive the test statistic CDF. You do not need to make any calculations. Your program should use stochastic simulation to generate an ensemble of small sample test statistics, each constructed from a set of 5 exponentially distributed random variables. Generate these random variables with the internal MATLAB function expernd. Estimate the exponential distributional parameter required by expernd from the 5 Massachusetts observations provided in problem 4. Include in your program the capability to plot your derived test statistic CDF using normplot. Why can't you use the t-statistic for this problem? statisticshomeworksolver.com. The MATLAB documentation for the expernd and normplot functions is attached at the end of this exam. statisticshomeworksolver.com. Regress multiple linear regression using least squares. B equals regress, y x returns the vector of regression coefficients, b, in the linear model y equals xb, x is an nxp matrix, y is the nx1 vector of observations. bintr stats equals regress, y x is alpha, uses the input alpha to calculate 1 alpha confidence intervals for b and the residual vector, r, in bint and rnt respectively. The vector stats contains the r-square statistic along with the f and p values for the regression. The X matrix should include a column of 1s so that the model contains a constant term. The f and p values are computed under the assumption that the model contains a constant term, and they are not correct for models without a constant. The r-square value is the ratio of the regression sum of squares to the total sum of squares. ANOVA 2 two-way analysis of variance. ANOVA 2 X reps displayopt performs a balanced two-way ANOVA for comparing the means of 2 or more columns and 2 or more rows of the sample in X. The data in different columns represent changes in one factor. The data in different rows represent changes in the other factor. If there is more than one. statisticshomeworksolver.com. Observation per row column pair, then the argument reps indicates the number of observations per cell. A cell contains reps number of rows. DisplayOpt can be on, the default, to display the table, or off to skip the display. For example, if reps equals 3, then each cell contains 3 rows and the total number of rows must be a multiple of 3. If X has 12 rows, and reps equals 3, then the row factor has 4 levels, 3 times 4 is equal to 12. The second level of the row factor goes from rows 4 to 6. P table equals ANOVA 2, returns 2 items. P is a vector of p-values for testing row, column, and if possible interaction effects. Table is a cell array containing the contents of the ANOVA table. To perform unbalanced two-way ANOVA, use ANOVAN. EXPRND random matrices from exponential distribution. R equals EXPRND, MU, returns a matrix of random numbers chosen from the exponential distribution with parameter MU. The size of R is the size of MU. Alternatively, R equals EXPRND, MUMN, returns an M by N matrix. Normplot displays a normal probability plot. statisticsassignmenthelp.com. H equals normplot, X, makes a normal probability plot of the data in X. For matrix X, normplot displays a plot for each column. H is a handle to the plotted lines. The purpose of a normal probability plot is to graphically assess whether the data in X could come from a normal distribution. If the data are normal, the plot will be linear. Other distribution types will introduce curvature in the plot. statisticshomeworksolver.com.